You have got to be kidding me. Door won't latch. I'm going to show you how to fix it properly right now. I've seen a lot of videos on YouTube as to how to get your door to latch when it no longer latches. And none of them are actually proper repairs. And today I'm going to show you how to do this easily and properly. We're not going to bend any hinges. We're not going to do any of that jazz. We're just going to fix this and fix it right. Hi everybody, I'm Jim Deerdorf and this is Detroit DIY. Let's fix this door. The first thing you're going to want to do is measure your hinges. Some hinges are 3.5 inches and some are 4. Once you determine what hinge you have, you need to go pick up some hinge shims. I got these at Menards. You can get them on Amazon. They used to have them at Home Depot and Lowe's, but I can't find them there anymore. Maybe they've decided that it's just not necessary. You're also going to need a multi-tool. Maybe, if the screws have been painted over. I'm going to use this to clean the paint out of the screws. You're going to need some screw tips, a screwdriver, impact gun, however you choose to remove and reinstall screws. You may also need some longer screws, some number 8 2-inch screws, if you find that any of the screws are stripped out. Let's inspect this door and see what's going on. The very first thing you're going to want to do is check your hinges and make sure that nothing is loose. None of these screws have come loose. As you can see, these have been painted and they're filled in and they're just going to need to have the heads cleaned out. However, in my case, these screws are tight. You can grab the edge of the door or grab the doorknob and lift it up and down and see if there's anything wiggling around. In my case, there's nothing. So let's see why this door won't latch. In my case, it appears as though that the problem here is some door settling. You can see right through there that the latch is lower than the strike. In that case, the bottom of the door needs to be pushed out. Also, upon inspection here, I can see that the gap is wider at the bottom of the door than it is at the top. The gap is also wider here than it is over here, which tells me that the door has sagged. Now, this is probably a product of settling in the home. So this door worked fine up until it's a spare bedroom, so it doesn't get opened and closed a lot, but it does a little bit. So let's get these hinges loose and see what we can get going on. I'm going to use the pointy end of my multi-tool. If you haven't seen my video on this, I'm going to put a link right up above for you to check that out. And I'm just going to dig the paint out of these screw heads until I can get the screwdriver to go into them. Shouldn't take but a minute. I'm going to do that with this bottom hinge and the second hinge up. Now that we have the paint cleared out of the screws, we want to go ahead and just loosen the center screw a little bit where it's sticking out, 1/8 of an inch or so, and then remove the upper and the lower screws completely. And we're going to do the exact same thing with the center hinge. The center hinge is ready, and the screw, I'm not backing it out as far, just a little bit, because I may need to put 1 or 2 shims behind this hinge. This hinge we're going to leave alone. There's no reason to touch it. There will be enough play in that pin of the hinge to be able to swing this door out. Now that we've got the hinges loose, I'm going to go ahead, push the door shut, lift up on it, get it to latch, like so. Now I need to push it up just a little bit further from the bottom. Let me show you how to do that. I have 3 composite shims here, just stacked like this. I'm going to slide them under the door and push them into place until it raises the door about another 1/8 of an inch. And they don't quite want to fit, so I'm going to go with 2. And I'm going to push them under with a little force. I want to raise the door up a little bit more than what it was. And then we're going to take a look at everything and make sure we're good. I'm pretty happy with that, and as you can see, it's pulled the hinge plate away from the door jamb. Now our shims are designed to go over the center screw with the upper and the lower screws not in place. They're also designed with a slight taper to them so that they will hold this hinge out on a slight angle. So what we want to do is just slide some shims in there. In my case, I'm going to try to put 3. They're going to go in there a little snug, and that's okay. Now I'm going to take my screwdriver and just push them into place. Now that they're all the way in, I'm going to go reattach the screws to this bottom hinge. Before I tighten the center screw, I'm going to go ahead and get the 2 outside screws restarted. Now I want to check and make sure that the shims are not going to interfere and hold the hinge out further than I want it to. And while it's hard to see, but the shims are protruding on the top and on the bottom corners just a little bit. They're not contoured exactly the same as my hinge. So they're holding this out further than I would like them to. So I'm going to take these screws back out, pull those hinges out, and trim them a little with my razor knife. I've taken the shims back out, and I'm just going to kind of hold them up here, and you can see that they line up with the screw holes perfect. However, they protrude a little too high above, so I'm just going to trim off these corners and make them fit in my hinge recess better than they currently do. Rather than razor knife, I opted for scissors. They cut very easily, and they round the corners off very nice. Now that I've modified my 3 shims, I'm going to go ahead and loosen this center screw back up and reinsert them. Now with all 3 shims reinstalled, I'm going to tighten the screws. And you want to make certain that your hinge sits back in where it was supposed to be, so that the edge of the hinge hasn't moved forward and is hanging up on the jamb. Now with those 3 screws tightened securely, you're going to notice that the hinge is kind of on an angle, that the front of the hinge is in closer to the door jamb than the rear of the hinge. That is what we want. 3 shims have proven to be a little too much because now I'm hitting at the bottom of the door. So I'm going to loosen this hinge up and take 1 shim out and see if we can gain clearance down there. I've removed 1 shim. The door now closes and latches, but it's still dragging here at the bottom. So I'm going to go ahead and remove 1 more shim and see what that gets us. With only 1 shim in the hinge, we now have clearance at the bottom of the door. However, the door no longer latches. So we need to make a little clearance right down there. To get more clearance over here, I need to force this over, and I'm going to do that with a couple of screws. I've put a countersink bit in my drill, and this has an adjustable drill bit, so I've pushed it back because I don't want to drill into the 2x4 with that's behind here. I want the screw to do that. So I'm just going to come down here low, right in this trim piece where I know that I'm going to get into a 2x4. And I'm going to countersink that a little bit, and I'm going to come up here and do another one. I'm going to be using 2-inch Spax construction screws, one in each hole, obviously. My 2 screws pulled it over a little bit, but not quite enough. So what I want to do is just take this piece of scrap wood and just kind of tap on it a couple of times and move it over a little bit. Let's see if that worked. And that corrected all of my issues. So with 2 shims in the bottom, we still have to address this center hinge because we have moved it out just a little bit. So what I'm going to do is put 1 shim behind this center hinge and tighten it down. With that 1 shim installed, we're going to tighten this hinge down. Sometimes the issue you may run into is these screws are stripped, your hinges are loose, and that's why your door's not closing, and you don't need shims at all. You just need to get the screws tightened. You're going to use a 2-inch Spax construction screw, same thing I did down there, with the tapered head, same as the hinge, and a Phillips tip. And rather than putting this screw back in, you're going to put this screw in. And this screw is going to run into the 2x4 that's back here supporting the wall. It's going to tighten up, and it's going to pull that right in there for you. And that is an easy way to fix a stripped screw. The other thing you can do, if your door is only missing the strike plate by a little bit, the latch is just missing by a little bit, you can come in here with a file and file this out some and make this hole a little bit larger, down further or up higher, whatever you need to do to get the door to latch. Now that the door is latching fine, that is a perfect, long-lasting repair. If you'd like to get an amazing shirt like this, I've put a link in the description to my store. We have sweatshirts, t-shirts, coffee cups. Go check it out. I'd greatly appreciate it if you did so. If you haven't subscribed yet, I would appreciate it if you would consider doing so. That's all we got for this time. If you enjoyed yourself, click on one of those 2 videos that are going to pop up next to me. And remember to always respect the power of your power tools. We'll see you soon.